hardest part is figuring out what you want to master.
Focus on your product.
Can you tell somebody that they suck?
You got to just go for this is exactly what I want to do for a living.
You can't even tell somebody that their breath is life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Short Story Long. Today, we have a guest who single-handedly has spent the last 7 years of his life figuring out what makes people successful. And he's tracked down some of the highest achieving people on this planet Earth. He's won a sailboat and also sold it. And he's made his way onto The Price is Right. Alex Banayan. Did I say that right?
You said it perfectly.
Thank you for coming, man. I'm really excited about this. We have some mutual friends. You gave me some books to give away on my social media. We've been 1 degree of separation from each other for a while, but now we're here, and we're going to have a magical podcast, man. Thank you.
Dude, thank you for having me. What a funny intro. That was
right?
amazing.
Just working on my energy.
I love it.
I told you one of the notes I got from my homies that are helping me with the podcast is like, you start off a little boring. And so I'm trying to start off a little bit more excited to be sitting here.
Well, that made me laugh, man, so thank you.
There we go. Alex, I am so excited because let me just say one thing about you. You're 25 years old?
Yeah.
You're 25 years old. So every time I do one of these things, I make sure that I go look up, and Danny helps me look up any information that I can find on the person just so that I can at least give it a scan. Like, I want to still be genuinely curious, but I don't want to miss something major that maybe happened. And when you look up your information online, it's a pretty insane resume, right? Like, it looks so from 30 under 30 to Price is Right to it looks so incredible. So congratulations on just having an insane sort of internet resume.
For a college dropout, man, that means a lot. Thank you.
It's so good. Where are you from?
So I was born and raised actually right here.
Got it.
I was born at Cedars Hospital 5 minutes away.
Yeah. And what exact area did you grow up in?
So I grew up here in LA, but my parents came 30 years ago from Iran.
Got it.
And they came as refugees because we're Jewish, and during the Iranian Revolution, they sort of had to flee for their lives.
And you know much about that story?
You know what's the craziest thing? I found out the true story of my family's escape 5 years ago.
Why did they hold out so long?
Well, there's the thing. No, they told me a story as a kid, but it wasn't the story.
Was it like a peaceful version?
They told me, okay, so pretty much when I was a kid, I would notice that in my family photo albums, my grandpa would be missing from photos for a little small period of time. And I'd always ask where he was, and they would say to Danishgabude, which means he was at the university. Turns out university was code word for execution camp.
Jesus.
And dude, the story is wild, and
that's nuts. And then so did they tell you when you were younger, okay, he's at the university? Did they try to explain to you why they had to sort of escape, or were they just America had better opportunity, we wanted to try that out?
I knew they would always say revolution, but they never went into detail. And the story, what I've learned, actually, in hindsight, really sets up the context for this journey that I went on without me knowing.
Yeah.
So it starts out, about 90 years ago in Iran. So my grandpa's born to a family of, mother and father, older brother, 4 daughters, and then him.
Yep.
And when he's 3 years old, his dad dies. And in Iran at the time, women weren't allowed to work really, so it was up to the oldest brother to provide for the family. But thank God he was 18 and he starts working. 2 years later, that older brother dies.
Jesus.
So now my grandpa's 5 years old and the only male left in his family. But his mom was really smart and had a lot of foresight, so she said, look, you're going to stay in school and I'll make ends meet. So she's selling her wedding rings, she's selling the couch, she's selling the vase, doing whatever she can to put food on the table.
Yeah.
When my grandpa's around 8 or 9, he realizes this isn't sustainable. So he's going through the newspaper in Iran. This is a 9-year-old, right? He's going through the newspaper.
When you said isn't sustainable at a 9-year-old, I'm holy cow.
So, and he was apprenticing for different shopkeepers at the time, but he's I need to start making money.
Yeah.
So he's 9 years old. He's going through the newspaper and he sees in the classified section in Iran, the government is asking for paint thinner. And, he's how hard could that be? So he just gets an insertion order or whatever and fills it out. But because he's so young, he like grossly underbids how much it actually costs.
Yeah.
So when he submits it, he wins the bid because he offered such a low price.
Yeah.
So the government doesn't know who the fuck, like how old he is.
Yeah.
So they give him the bid. He goes to the market, meets this family friend who has paint thinner, gets the paint thinner, gives it to the government, makes some money, and, you know, he's home free and, you know, has some cash in his hand and feels on top of the world.
At 9 years old?
And then a couple weeks later, this is the fucking craziest part. A couple weeks later, he's in geometry class. He remembers it was a geometry class. He's in geometry class, and the police show up. And they find him, and they pull him out of class, and they pretty much say, the paint thinner you gave us is expired. And if you don't give us new paint thinner, you're going to have a serious problem.
Uh-huh.
So he's 9 years old. He's freaking out. What is he going to do?
I'm so mind blown. Can you imagine a 9-year-old in a school hallway like, listen, kid, you hustled us, and if you don't get us some real
Dude, the
paint
government of Iran, like to a little Jewish 9-year-old boy, and it's not a good situation.
Amazing. So what do you do?
So he goes back to that family friend he bought the paint thinner from, and he's like, yo, you gave me expired paint thinner. And the guy goes, no, that's your problem, not mine.
Ugh.
So now this, you know, my 9-year-old grandpa has to go around the bazaars and eventually finds another paint thinner dealer, gets it, uses his profit to get the paint thinner, gives it to the government, and he's safe.
Uh-huh.
But that sort of puts this like entrepreneurial bug in him.
Yeah.
And he just starts working and working and working, doing more and more deals with the government.
Yeah.
And by the time he's 50, he's built like a really nice little entrepreneurial company. He has like one of the tallest buildings in the country's capital. But right then is when the revolution happens.
Jesus.
And the way they did it in Iran is that they made sort of this blacklist of Jews in the country who had, you know, resources.
Mm-hmm.
And one by one, they started taking them out. So one day my grandpa is in the, you know, the penthouse of this like high-rise office building, and these Revolutionary Guards with like, you know, masks storm his building, surround all the staircases, go up to his office, and essentially put a bag over his head at gunpoint and take him away.
Jesus.
And he gets taken to essentially what's a death compound, where they're just just housing all of these hostages and one by one executing them.
Crazy.
And
so is that what caused your parents to then be like, we got to get out of here?
So my mom and her 3 siblings were all like kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandma was able to escape, but my grandpa stayed back.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know if they'll ever see their dad again.
Mm-hmm.
He's not responding to, you know, calls, letters. And to this day, when I asked my grandpa the scariest moment of his life, he said, going to sleep every night and hearing gunshots and seeing one person not coming back to the compound.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't say, congratulations, welcome to the execution camp.
Mm-hmm.
They just sort of hold you in this room and you don't know what you're doing here. And you hear like bang, bang, bang. And a guy doesn't come back into the room.
Yeah.
So eventually they call his name over the like speakerphone. And they like take him down the corridor and put a bag over his head. And when they take it off, he's out of the compound. One of the guards had accepted a bribe. And my grandpa makes it to America as a refugee, but he's back to where he was when he was a kid, you know, with nothing.
Yeah.
And in many ways, that story of like unbelievable possibility.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was really like this context for this journey I went on. And I had no idea until after I wrote the book that my grandpa finally told me the story.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, man, it's fucking nuts.
That's insane. Do you think that do you think that there was anything in that just like hustler opportunity spirit that your parents instilled in you even subconsciously as a young person? Because you know, some parents, this is one thing that I'm learning as I do this a lot, and it's causing me to look at my life and people's lives around me, is like sometimes your parents, if your parents are scared of the world, you produce a kid that's scared of the world, right? If it's you can do anything, you do anything. If it's hard work, you work hard, right? And it's like, do you think that subconsciously programmed any of your spirit, or?
It might have. I think subconsciously, like I definitely got the hard work. I remember I think I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old one night, And yeah, I was about 4 years old because I was in my own bed, but I remember having a nightmare. So I like jumped out of bed in the middle of the night and went down the hallway to go to my parents' room. And I remember seeing this blue light coming out of my mom's bedroom, my mom and dad's bedroom. And I like cracked the door open and looked inside and saw my mom like at her computer working. I remember checking the time. It was like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. And I like left her alone. But the next night I woke up like on purpose again to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And the same thing. She was working again. And like day after day,
Yeah.
I would wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. and like check on my mom. And I found out years later, my dad's used car lot went bankrupt. So it was really up to my mom to provide for the family.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think subconsciously,
Yeah.
when I look at myself now, while I was working on this book, I would be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And I thought that was normal.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I think I did subconsciously get that from my mom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, man. It's
But she
crazy
never
how much-
told me to do it.
Yep. Yep. Ah, it's so good. So what type of stuff, when you were young, what type of stuff were you into? Like, were you... What were you doing?
Dude, our childhoods were the opposite. You loved skateboarding.
Yeah, loved it.
I never touched a skateboard in my life because my entire childhood was about being a doctor.
Really?
Because that's pretty much what happens when you're the son of Jewish immigrants.
That's so true. That's like almost a lot of immigrants,
Yeah.
right? It's just the safety thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, come get a guaranteed thing in America, you're good. Don't
Right,
try to
'cause
do all this
even-
fancy book stuff.
Exactly. Because if you're a doctor, my grandparents would always tell me,
Yeah.
if there's a revolution in this country, they can take away your money, they can take away your possessions, but if you can save people's lives, they can't take that away from you.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like a dream for me to be a doctor. It was the path. There was no debate about it.
And so, like, what age were you when you started, like, preparing? You know what I'm saying? Like, are you like 10
That's
years old?
a fucking great question. No, I'm 5 years old
Oh, shit.
because I remember in kindergarten, my mom, this is true story. My mom would put a skeleton chart on our refrigerator and every day at breakfast would like teach us a new name of a bone.
Yep.
And I actually remember this in second grade. I don't think I've told anybody this. In second grade, our PE coach was like, all right. And I wasn't that fit as a kid. I was like a chubby kid. So like I wasn't the best at PE. He's like, anyone who can answer this gets an automatic A. He was just like fucking with us because we were like 6 years old.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the name of this bone? And I'm just like, phalanges. And he was like, what?
You nailed it.
And like the whole school, like it spread that like this random 6-year-old knew like the hardest trivia question the coach could think of.
And did he give you an A?
Yeah, I got an A.
And were you just like the coolest kid, or were you like a smart?
No, they started calling me the doctor.
Yeah.
And in third grade, I wore scrubs to school for Halloween. Like it was my identity, you know?
Damn, at that age.
I went to pre-med summer camp in high school. Like it was my whole life.
So do you have like a pretty good amount of like basic medical knowledge? Like if someone in this office were to like sort of just fall out and they're like, is there a doctor here? Like you'd be our guy.
So again, another thing I've never admitted publicly.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, man. Every time I'm on an airplane and sometimes they're like, is there a doctor on board?
Yeah.
This is really fucked up of me, but it's not on purpose, but subconsciously when they say, is there a doctor on board? My like head perks up.
Yeah.
As if like, all right, if
You're
there's
like,
not a
kinda.
doctor on board, like I know the phalanges.
I know the basics. Like, listen,
I was a pre-med man.
Yeah. Holy. So you do have like, so you could maybe save a life.
No, I have so much respect for doctors that I know that I can't.
Sure. I'm not asking you to do major surgery, but if
Dude,
we're
I
close
can wrap
by.
a splint. I can like.
Yep. Great. So.
Dude, in pre-med summer camp, they taught me how to suture a banana. Like.
Got it. Yeah. Great. So you can do
The
the
basics. I can do the
Yeah.
basics.
If anything crazy happens in here, you can save us.
Got it.
At least you're our best bet.
It's so fun. The airplane thing is so embarrassing because it's true. It's happened multiple times.
I could see that though. I could totally see that. Because if that was me, like I would do the same thing. Because everyone's kind of looking anyway. If they ever ask that question,
Right.
everyone's like, shit, anyway, right? But like
I'll
we have
step
no
up.
skill set. Yeah, you have to. You have no choice. Imagine if on your resume it was also like saved 3 lives on Delta flight 724 on way to, you know what I mean? If you had like prices right, Forbes 30 under 30, saved a life on a Delta flight, you should look into that.
Just for the resume.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
So when pre-med summer camp, what age does that happen at?
So that was in high school.
Okay.
So, in high school, I pretty much checked the boxes. And by the time I got to college,
By check the boxes, you mean just did all you had to do, got all
I
A's,
did
your thing.
I did every single thing that you needed to do to follow this path.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I got to college, I'm the pre-med of pre-meds.
Yep.
But really quickly, and this happened really within the first month, I remember just lying on my bed, hitting snooze like 4 or 5 times each morning.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I was tired, but really because I was bored.
Yeah.
And at first I assumed I'm just being lazy. But slowly I began to wonder, maybe I'm not on my path.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm on a path somebody placed me on and I'm just rolling down.
Mm-hmm. That's early high school years?
No, this is first semester of college.
Okay, got it. So let me
Yeah.
high school, you go to pre-med. Summer camp, you're just kind of cruising along. High school, you check all the boxes, you do what you
And I'm
gotta
feeling
do.
great, man, because my parents are so happy.
Yeah.
And my grandparents are so happy.
Oh, that must be confusing.
And when
little
you're a
bit.
kid, you can't tell the difference between personal satisfaction
Mm-hmm.
and external satisfaction. All you know is it just feels good.
That's very true. I mean, there's a lot of like 40-year-olds that can't do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like even to have
that's
that
a
clarity.
great point.
Yeah. But okay, so then you go to college. Where'd you go to college?
So I went to USC.
Got it. And that was straight in, just straight beelining for being a doctor.
There was not even an elective I was taking.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
just pre-med, you know?
Yeah. So you're sitting there, you're being lazy. You think you're being lazy. Like, do those feelings just kind of start to creep in? Like, how's that feel? Like one day, are you just like, what if?
Yeah, it doesn't. What I've noticed, not just about my journey, but in every person who I've studied,
Mm-hmm.
it never comes like in the movies with this beautiful epiphany, with like trumpets. You're like, I got it. I'm not on my path.
There it is. Yeah.
No, it starts off as just like you're in a
Sleeping in.
weird mood.
Yeah.
Like all the kids around you are like motivated. You're not. It's very pretty much you just notice your energy start draining. But what I would also notice is I would sit in my pre-med classes
Yeah.
reading like the 4-hour work week, like under the desk.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of energy for other shit, but I
Yeah.
thought I was procrastinating.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was just not on my path.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by that because I think a lot of people go through that and maybe sometimes never fully like abandon and go on the path, right? You just kind of live this half satisfied life. You know what I mean? And also a lot of young people that come to me are asking, one of the biggest questions is, how do I find my path? Like, how do I find my purpose, whatever. And the best thing you can ever tell anyone is to just follow that energy and follow what excites you and follow it. But that's a hard thing to really like say, the feeling when you feel it. You know what I mean?
So it's terrifying.
So how did that turn from waking up late into like, did you have to go into your parents one day and say like, guys, my whole life is a lie?
In some ways, you're actually telling my life story in a much funnier version. But it's like actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm in college. I'm going through this life crisis. I'm spending every day lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
And, it feels like my biology books are like dementors sucking the life out of me.
Yeah.
And that's, when I start going through this, what I want to do with my life crisis.
Yep.
And that starts to evolve into these questions of, all right, maybe I don't know what I want to do with my life, but even if I didn't know, how would I even, get started? And I started thinking how all these people who I looked up to, how they did it.
Yep.
How did Bill Gates, when he was also like a nobody, college freshman, sell software out of his dorm room when nobody knew his name?
Yeah.
Or how did Spielberg, when he was rejected from film school, become the youngest director in Hollywood history?
Yeah.
Like these things didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So I just assumed there had to be an answer. So I just went to the library and I started ripping through biographies and business books and self-help books. But eventually I was left empty-handed. So that's when my naive...
Empty-handed in what way? I mean, like you just didn't quite feel like you got what you were looking for?
Yeah, I went through every... And the books were amazing.
Yeah.
Outliers, the 4-Hour Work Week, different biographies. Like, they all had great information.
Yeah.
But none of them had... Pretty much what I was dreaming of was this very specific, like, holy grail book.
Yeah.
Where, because I didn't know what I wanted people from all industries, and I wanted to solely focus on when they couldn't get people to answer their calls,
Yep.
couldn't get their foot into the door to get meetings. How do they find a way to break through?
Yep.
Because I didn't care. You could read Forbes and read about Bill Gates, secrets of leadership running
Saw
Microsoft.
the wins. Yeah. And it's funny because as you're saying it, like I'm fascinated by the same thing. And that's essentially the goal here is like, tell me the real story.
Right.
Like tell me
the dirty one, the gritty one.
Like let me connect to like when you just thought could never do this. You know what I mean? And then give me the ending of everything's great. What'd you learn? Awesome. You know what I mean? But let me really connect. I get it. I have the same sort of like, I guess, same questions. Okay, so what do you do then? Like you devour all these books. You're still not quite fulfilled. Then what do you do?
So I was so naive because I was 18 years old. I was like, well, if no one's going to write the book I'm dreaming of reading, why not write it myself? And I thought it'd be super simple. Just call up Bill Gates, interview him.
Sure, easy.
Because, he helps kids all the time. Why wouldn't he help me?
His number's in the phone book.
Right. So I thought that would be the easy part.
Yeah.
The hard part I figured was getting money to fund the journey. I was buried in student loan debt. I was all out of bar mitzvah cash. So there had to be a way to make some quick money.
Yeah.
So I'm brainstorming this, and about 2 nights before final exams, I'm in the library doing what everyone's doing in the library right before finals. I'm on Facebook.
Yeah. It's so good. Yep.
So I'm on Facebook, and I see someone posting saying free tickets to The Price is Right. And I swear the first thought that came to my mind was, what if I go on the show and win some money to fund this dream? Not my brightest moment.
It's a moment.
Right?
Yeah.
But I had a bigger problem, right? Not only did I have finals in 2 days, I'd never seen a full episode of the show before.
Yeah.
I'd seen when you were homesick from school,
yeah. I can remember the bits. I can't remember that I finished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you watch it for 5 minutes. I was a kid with low attention span.
3,500. Oh, you idiot. And then you switch.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That was my whole experience.
Yeah. You're so stupid. All right. Let's see what's on South Park.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd never seen a full episode before. So I told myself it was a dumb idea and to not think about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever had one of those moments where a thought just keeps clawing its way into your mind.
Oh yeah. Those are the ones you gotta act on.
Yeah, well, my problem was I literally had all these biology books in front of me. Yeah. So I needed to get the thought out of my mind so I could focus on studying.
Yep.
So I took out my spiral notebook and wrote, best and worst case scenarios to prove to myself it was a bad idea.
Yep.
I remember sitting at this little round wooden table in the library, my notebook, and I'm like, best and worst case scenarios. Worst case scenarios. Fail finals. Get kicked out of pre-med. Lose financial aid. Mom stops talking to me.
Yeah,
no, mom hates me. Look fat on TV. 20 cons, right?
Yeah.
The only pro was maybe win enough money to fund this dream. And it was as if somebody had tied a rope around my gut and was slowly pulling in a direction. So, that night I decided to do the logical thing and pull an all-nighter to study. But I didn't study for finals. I studied how to hack The Price is Right.
And how do you even go down that road? Like when you say hack The Price is Right, essentially what you're saying is how to get on it, how to get chosen. Is that the hack or is...
Yeah, I had a feeling. And I think it had to do with all these business books I had just read.
Yep.
Like the 4 Hour Work Week and stuff like that, where I was like, all right, there has to be a system to this.
Yep.
And sure enough, I pulled an all-nighter Googling, how to get on The Price is Right, and I found there actually is a system. So, they make it look random, like, drama, come on down.
Woo, I got this, Mom.
Right?
Yeah.
They make it look like this random lottery.
Yep.
What I learned at around 3 a.m. in my Googling on page, the 23rd O of Google, I learned there's actually a producer who interviews every single person in the audience.
Okay.
And on top of that, there's an undercover producer who then confirms or denies the main producer selection. So there's a whole system to it. So I realized, all right, I get the next morning, I get to the CBS studios. I'm wearing this bright red shirt, big black puffy jacket, neon yellow sunglasses. I look like a chubby toucan. It's perfect.
Yeah.
And I get there, and because I don't know who the undercover producer is, I just have to assume everyone's the undercover producer. So I'm dancing with old ladies. I'm like flirting with the custodians. I'm breakdancing and I don't know how to breakdance.
Yep.
And eventually, after a while, it's like my turn to be interviewed. You wait in line, it's my turn. And the producer is standing about like 3 times the distance of this room.
Got it.
And the second I see him, I know who he is because I had spent all night researching him. His name is Stan, and I knew where he grew up. I knew where he went to college. I knew pretty much what he ate for breakfast that morning.
Yeah.
And I knew that he has a rhythm to his moves. And he has a clipboard, but it's never in his hands. It's in the hands of his assistant who's sitting right behind him. So if he likes you, he'll ask you another question. If he really likes you, he'll ask one final question. And if he loves you, he'll turn around, wink to his assistant, and she'll put your name on the clipboard. So if The Price is Right is a nightclub, Stan is the bouncer. And if you're not on his list,
you got nothing.
you're out.
Yeah.
Right?
So then, what do you do? Like, do you go? It's your turn, and are you like, "What's up, my dude? Like, you know what I love? Pizza with mushrooms on it, specifically from Italy. Me too. What? Like, what do you do? How do you charm Stan?
So, everybody knows you have to be energetic. If you've seen the show, it's all these crazy personalities.
Yep.
But when you get to the audition, everyone's loud and crazy. So it's really tricky.
Yeah.
But Stan has a rhythm. So he walks down the line and he goes, "What's your name? What's your name? Where are you from? What do you do?" And he goes to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Hey, I'm Alex. I'm 18 years old. I'm a freshman in college. I'm studying pre-med." And he goes, "Pre-med? You must spend a lot of time studying. How do you have time to watch The Price is Right?" And I go, "Oh, is that where I am?" No, I didn't even get a pity laugh. It was so bad. So, I can see his eyes starting to wander. So I knew I had to do something.
Yeah.
So I had read in one of these books recently, I think it was like a Tony Robbins book. It said, human contact speeds up a relationship. So I had an idea. I had to touch Stan. But he's 20 feet away from me and I'm behind this metal pole.
Yeah.
So I'm like, "Stan, come over here. I want to make a handshake with you." And he's like, no, it's okay. I'm like, come on. So, he eventually comes over and we make a handshake and I teach him how to pound it and blow it up. And he laughs and he's like, "All right, kid, good luck." And he walks away.
No clipboard.
No clipboard, no wink. And this was one of those moments where you can see your entire dream right in front of you, walking away, slipping through your fingers almost like sand.
Yeah.
And the worst part is, you didn't even have a chance to really prove yourself. And I don't know what got into me, but right then I felt this rumbling in my stomach. And I started yelling at the top of my lungs, "Stan!" The whole audience shoots their head over. I'm like, "Stan!" And he runs over. He thinks I'm having a seizure or something. He's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And now I have no idea what I'm going to say. But he's just looking at me. And he's typical Hollywood, turtleneck, red scarf, even though it's 70 degrees outside.
Yep.
And I'm just looking at him. And all I can think is, I'm like, "Your scarf!" And now I really don't know what I'm going to say.
Putting yourself in a corner.
Right. And dude, the whole audience is watching. You can feel the tension.
Yeah.
And all I can think is I look at him with all the seriousness I can. And I'm just like, "I'm an avid scarf collector. I have 362 pairs in my dorm room and I'm missing that one. Where did you get it?" And he starts cracking up. And a part of me thinks that he finally realized what I was actually trying to do.
Yeah.
And he was laughing more at why I was doing it.
Yeah.
He gives me his scarf. He's like, "Trust me, you need this more than I do." He laughs some more, turns around, and his assistant makes a mark on the clipboard.
Damn it. And in that moment, you're like, yes.
Yes, I'm feeling amazing because literally minutes later, I noticed this younger woman, mid-20s, long brown hair, walking around the audience and looking around at everyone's name tag.
Yep.
I'm like, huh.
The secret producer.
Right. And she had a laminated badge. It had to be the undercover producer.
Yeah.
So I'm 18 and I just came out of puberty at the time. So I looked pretty funny.
Yeah.
And I start blowing her kisses and she starts laughing. I start dancing and she starts laughing more. And she takes a sheet of paper out of her pocket looks at my name tag, and makes a mark.
So now you're double.
Right. So now you would think like I'm feeling like on top of the world.
Yeah.
But right then is when I realized I had spent the entire night before studying how to get on the show. I still didn't know how to play.
Yep.
But dude, no worries, right? I just took my phone out of my pocket and Google, I still had an hour left.
Yeah.
I was like, how to play Price is Right on
Yeah.
Google. I'm reading 30 seconds later. I feel a tap on my shoulder. Security takes my phone away.
Damn, I thought you were going to say they called you to the stage.
I wish,
Like-
man. So, security takes my phone away. And now I have no plan on what to do.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting on this, cold metal bench sulking.
Mhm.
And this old woman is sitting next to me and she's like, honey, what's the matter?
Mhm.
And I'm in a pissy mood. And I tell her about my dream. I tell her about my phone being taken. I tell her I've never seen the show before. And she's like, honey, I've been watching the show for 40 years. And I'm like, do you have any advice? And she like pinches my cheek and she's like, you remind me of my grandson.
It's one of those classic moments.
And yeah, and I remember she had this big bob of like silver hair. She was like, couldn't have been nicer. And she ends up giving me this unbelievable advice. 40 years of wisdom downloading into my head. And the light bulb goes off. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I give her a hug and I turn to the person next to me and I'm like, hey, I'm Alex. I'm 18. I've never seen the show before. Do you have any advice? And then I turn to a group of people, then another group of people. And over the course of an hour, I jump around to almost half the audience crowdsourcing their wisdom.
Yeah.
And right then, the doors to the studio open. And dude, when you step in there, the place smells like the 1970s. Like, they haven't changed like the carpet in
That's what I
decades.
picture, yeah.
You know?
I thought you were going to say, like, it smells like opportunity. And
No,
you're like, it smells like my grandma's house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know the smell of like old furniture?
Yep.
That's what it smells like.
Yep.
So, you take a seat, there's loud music playing, and then very quickly is when you hear that, the famous words.
Yeah.
Live from CBS Studio in Hollywood, it's The Price is Right. And the audience goes crazy.
Yeah.
And they call down the first contestant, and, it's not me. The second, the third. But for the fourth, I feel it coming. So I'm literally about to stand up.
Yeah.
Still not me. So I just like sit back in my chair and I'm like, whatever, it's like not a big deal. Maybe it's meant to be. I have finals tomorrow. Like, let me just, have some fun and I'll go back and study. So I'm watching the show unfold. And the way the show works is, there's 4 contestants at the podium.
Okay.
And once one wins and moves on to the bonus round, there's now an empty spot at the podium. So it's time for the 5th contestant. And that's when I hear, Alex Banayan, come on down. I lose my shit.
Do you do the classics like, oh my God, oh my
Okay,
God?
this is the thing. I had told myself if I get called down, I'm going to be calm and normal.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
Because there's so,
You weren't even acting at that point.
no, they
Yeah.
engineer it.
Yeah.
Like they blast music. They like put your name on this big sign. Like they swing all the camera. You cannot be calm in that moment.
yeah.
I'm hugging strangers. I'm high-fiving. I'm just high-fiving people. It's crazy.
Is it on YouTube?
No, I need to put it up.
You
though.
need to. You
I have it on my laptop.
You
yeah.
have to put it on YouTube. Okay, keep going.
So, I'm jumping up and down. I get to my podium, and without a second to think, they go, a new leather chair and ottoman. And the way the show works, you have to guess the price, right? I'm a freshman in college. I don't know how much milk costs.
Yeah.
I'm eating in the dining hall every day.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Leather chair and ottoman. I'm like, $400. And the audience laughs at me, and it was 1,100. I lose.
Yep.
Then it's time for the next round. A new billiards table. My cousins have a billiards table. Like, how expensive could it be?
Yeah.
I'm like, $600. And again, everyone laughs. But then they guess, because everyone laughed, that other contestants bid higher and higher and higher. And the way the show works is that if you bid over, even by $1, you're out.
Yeah.
So they all overbid. So I won by default.
Oh,
So
do
they're
you
like,
remember what the real price was?
it was like, I think it was expensive. It was like $1,400.
Yes, you were way off. But
Way
they
off.
were all over.
But this is the funny thing. I've like studied the video just for fun.
Yeah.
Because I bid so low and everybody laughed at me. Everybody bid way high.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So my low bid actually forced them, inspired them to bid high.
Yeah.
So, they're like, Alex, come on up here. So I run onto the stage, and the host is Drew Carey. And he's like, well, it's time for your bonus round, young man. And, the doors open, and it's this fucking unbelievable hot tub. 12 jets, and the models are waving their hands, and, 12 jets, LED lights, a waterfall. Like, all I can think is, if I win this hot tub, I am the king of college. So, like, all of the pressure is on.
Entire dream.
Dude, forget about the book, man. Yeah. Hot tub? This is amazing. Dude, my dorm room is like, can't even fit in a fucking, like, rolling chair. Yeah. And I'm thinking of a hot tub now. So, all the pressure's on. I guess, like, $4,000. It was $9,000. So I lose the hot tub. And I think I'm done with the show. And they go, we'll be right back with the wheel. And I'm like,
yeah, the damn wheel.
Right? I didn't remember. And I'm like, excuse me, who spins the wheel? And they're like, who spins? You spin. And they sort of explained to me that the wheel is this giant, pretty much slot machine. With numbers 5, 10, 15, 20, all the way up to 100. And if you get closest to 100, you win. And if you get, it's very rare, but if you land perfectly on 100, you get like a crazy cash bonus. So it's finally time,
Is it you versus one other person?
It's me versus two. It's 3 contestants.
Got it.
So, dude, it's cool because they cart it out onto the stage, and it has light bulbs and glitter. It's like, you feel like you're in Las Vegas, you know?
Yeah.
And the first woman goes up, and she's this young, curly hair, peppy girl, like a woo girl,
Yeah.
And she like gives it a spin, and it's like tick, 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 tick. 80. And the audience goes ballistic because, even I know that's an unbelievable spin.
Yeah, 80's good.
Yeah, she's wooing, she's celebrating. She goes to the winner's circle, and now it's my turn. And I go up there and I grab it. I'm like, my hands are sweaty. And the wheel is a lot heavier than it looks. And I give it a spin, and it goes tick, 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 85. And the audience is like going crazy. I'm like their dumb younger brother. They're loving this. They know I have no idea what I'm doing. They're going crazy. I'm going crazy. I go to the winner's circle, and now it's like me versus this older woman. She goes up, gives it a spin. Tick, 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 tick. She goes over 100. She gets disqualified, so I win. And I start going crazy because I think I just won the whole show. And that's when I hear, we'll be right back with the second half of The Price is Right.
Man, worst case. So down at that point, you're just like, what the hell do I got to do now?
And so the second half of the show goes by in a snap, and I finally find out who I'm going up against for the final round. And her name is Tanisha. And she blasted through the second half of the show with the ferociousness of someone who spent her entire life walking through Costco studying price tags. Like, she's she was so good. Moment. She was so good, you know? She was born for this.
Like, easy, billiards table, $11.75.
Right, she's been watching it every day for years, you know? So now it's the commercial break before the final round.
Okay.
And we're on stage, and Tanisha walks towards me. I believe in karma to a degree. So I put out my hand, and I'm like, good luck.
Yeah.
And she looks me up and down, and she's like, yeah, you'll need it. And the whole audience is like, oh, shit. It's like a rap battle on the stage of The Price is Right. It's like super heated.
Yeah.
And I'm like thinking, fuck, she's right. I do need it.
Yeah.
And I realized that everyone who gave me advice before the show started gave me great advice, but no one gave me any feedback or guidance on how to play the final round.
Yeah.
Because no one thought I'd make it that far.
Yeah.
So I'm like, shit, what am I going to do? So I see the host, Drew Carey. So I throw my arms in the air, and I'm like, Drew, I loved you on Whose Line Is It Anyway? He's like, okay.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alex.
Exactly. Even though he had his own show called The Drew Carey Show. I'm like, I loved you on that random show, you know? So, I give him this awkward hug, and I'm like, hey, Drew, any advice on the showroom showdown? And he goes, first of all, it's the showcase showdown. Clearly I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And, before I know it, it gives me some great advice, and I'm standing behind the podium, and the way it works, there's like 8 blinding white lights in your eyes, 6 machine gun sized cameras in your face, the ones with the rollies on it.
Yeah.
Like the pressure's on, I'm sweating, Tanisha's dancing, and, it's like time for the showcase showdown.
Yeah.
And they're like, Alex, your first prize, and the way it works is they say 5 prizes, and if you guess, you have to guess the price of all of them combined. And if you guess closest without going over, you win.
And you win all the prizes?
You win the whole package.
Got it.
So, and it's like crazy shit in there.
Yeah.
They're like, Alex, and this is something you have to know. They don't give you like an earpiece.
Yeah.
You have to hear the announcer over all the audience is cheering.
Yeah.
And I never watched the show that much.
Yeah.
I'm not really too privy to what's happening.
Yeah.
So this is what I hear. Alex, you're in for action and adventure with a trip to Six Flags Magic Mountain theme park. Blah, 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 blah.
Uh-huh.
All these details that I think are irrelevant.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in LA, like Six Flags theme park, like $50 with a can of Coke,
Sure. Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I went when I was in high school.
Yeah.
What I didn't hear in the details is that the blah, blah, blah was VIP, front of the line, all you can eat food with like a butler in a limo for 6 people. But I'm thinking easy next, $50.
$50.
Dude, I'm feeling good.
Yeah.
So I'm like $50, easy, next.
Mm-hmm.
Your next prize is a trip to Florida. Blah, 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 blah. Dude, I'm 18. I've never booked a plane ticket in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that, like $200?
Easy.
Easy.
Yeah.
Next.
Yeah.
Again, what I didn't know is that it's, first class, rental car, 5-star hotel for 2 people.
Uh-huh.
But I'm like, cool, $200.
Easy.
Next.
$250.
All right.
We're set.
While you're in Florida, a trip into zero gravity. And I'm thinking like, that's another theme park. All right, another $50.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that this is how NASA trains their astronauts.
Yep. On the plane, right? The 747?
Exactly.
Oh, we did that once.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah.
So
It has to be pretty expensive.
every 15 minutes in that is $5,000.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm thinking $50.
$50. Move on. 300 total.
Right. Dude, all right, so we're on the same page. So, and your final prize, and the doors open, and the supermodel's like waving her arms, a new sailboat. And, I lose my shit. I'm super excited, but eventually I calm down and I look at the sailboat, and it sort of looks like a dinghy from where I'm standing.
Yeah.
It's like looks pretty small.
$500.
How expensive could a dinghy be?
Yeah.
What I didn't hear is that it was a Catalina Mark II sailboat with a cabin and a trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, all right, cool, like
Dinghy.
$500,
Yep.
maybe a few thousand. I don't know, how expensive could it be?
Yep.
So they're like, Alex, this will all be yours if the price is right. So I am calculating in my head, and I'm not super religious, but if there was ever a moment to like listen to that voice of God,
Yep.
it's then, so I like close my eyes and I hear this one number inside of me. And I was like, all right, I don't know where that number's coming from. I'm just going to trust the voice.
Uh-huh.
So I grabbed the mic and I'm like, $6,000, Drew. Dead silence. It's as if someone has died on the set of The Price is Right. And eventually I'm very confused because the audience has been cheering the whole day, right?
Yep.
So I'm like, why are they being so quiet?
Yeah.
And then I realized Drew Carey hasn't locked in my answer. So I look at him and he's looking at me like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I finally get the hint. So I grab the mic and I'm like, just kidding? And everybody starts cheering. And he's like, oh, college kids these days, what's your real answer? And I'm thinking, fuck, that was my real answer.
Oh, man.
And I don't know what to do. So I just start pounding on the podium. I'm like, audience, I need your help. And like a miracle, they start chanting one number. But it's a mob. So I can't hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
And the producers are trying to cut me off. They're like, Drew's like, Alex, we need an answer. I can't hear them. He's like, we need an answer. So I'm like, all right, Drew. And I heard like the TH sound. So I'm like, all right, Drew, I'm going to the audience. $300. And literally Drew grabs the mic and goes, you know, there's a difference between 300 and 30,000, right? And I'm like, of course I knew that. $30,000. And he goes, great, we're locking in, moving on. And I'm just like, what just happened? And Tanisha looks at me as if she's going up against someone in preschool.
Yeah. You really needed that luck.
Yeah, man.
So then what'd she say?
So Tanisha gets her own package of like a car and a vacation and an ATV. She guesses like $35,000. And now it's time to reveal the winner.
Oh, man.
Tanisha, you guessed $35,000. Retail price, $36,400.
Tanisha.
And Tanisha is cheering at the top of her lungs because she just got a new car in her mind.
Absolutely.
You know, the audience, her friends in the audience are going crazy. And all I can think is, I don't have time to be sad because I have finals in like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, all right, if I leave right now and go straight to the library, have 2 hours for bio, 3 hours to study for chem. Mom doesn't even know I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm just in crisis management. They're like, Alex, you guessed $30,000, retail price, blah, 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 blah. You know, I'm not listening.
Yeah.
And then I notice the audience is just going ballistic. And I see the producers are like motioning at me. And then I notice my podium is flashing. So out of curiosity, I like turn around. I walk around the podium to look at the number on the podium because I didn't hear the number. And I see the podium is flashing. I guessed $30,000. Retail price, $31,200. I beat Tanisha by $200. And my face literally goes from this to... you know, jumping up and down. I'm like jumping on the sailboat. I get the sailboat, sell the sailboat, and that's how I funded the book.
Whew. Holy cow, man. That is insane. That is so insane. Okay. Okay, so my question is, your parents didn't know you were on The Price is Right. So did that cause a whole nother thing? Like, not bad, but I mean, was it like, Alex, how the hell did you end up on The Price is Right and you won?
When I told them I went on The Price is Right, they knew that I was going to use the money to fund this like project that I had cooking.
Yeah.
They didn't know that it would eventually lead me to dropping out of pre-med and all that.
Yeah.
It all came in these little steps.
But did they think, like, how did you end up on The Price is Right winning with this weird outfit on and red scarf?
They just thought it was like the craziest coincidence of all time.
Got it.
And I wondered it too. The craziest part is my friends sort of like called bullshit on me. They're like, you didn't hack it. I was like, all right, let's see. I'll give you this. I'll train you. Give me 30 minutes. I'll train you with a strategy. Let's see what happens. All three of the friends who I've trained have all gotten on the show and won prizes.
Has anyone ever called you from Price is Right and be like, hey, man, can you chill out? Like, we got to change our whole shit up.
Oh, you want to hear the craziest thing?
Yeah.
And I don't think I've shared this publicly before because I don't know if I'm allowed to, but whatever, fuck it. About a year ago, once the book started, coming together and I knew I needed money to like fund the book launch, I was like, all right, where can I get some extra cash from? Because I was working on the book full time. It's not like I have another job. So I'm like, where can I get some extra cash? So my sister, literally like that week, I'm with her and she's like, hey, there's this game show filming like right here in LA. And I'm pretty sure like tomorrow's the final day of the game show. And I think they still have tickets. Like, you should check it out. So I Google it, and it was a game show that wasn't even out yet. So there was no way for me to even prepare. But it was its final day of filming was the next morning at 6 a.m. and it was 8 p.m. that night. But there were 3 tickets left. So I literally just put in my info and got the 3 tickets, and I called 2 of my best friends. I was like, guys, what are you doing tomorrow morning? And they're like, I don't know, work. I'm like, all right, call in sick. Meet me 6 a.m. tomorrow here. Yeah. So me and my 2 best friends show up at this. It's a show on the Game Show Network. We show up, and there's no way to prepare. So we're just like, all right, let's do the exact Price is Right strategy to see what happens. 4 hours later, I walk away with a brand new car. and I sell the car, and that helped fund the book launch.
Holy shit. You're just an expert at this weird thing. You're like a card counter or something. You know what I mean? Holy cow. Now you go back. You still have to go, obviously, do your finals.
Yeah.
Do all that stuff. You have this sailboat, right? How the hell do you sell a sailboat?
Okay, you want to know the funniest thing about the sailboat?
Yeah.
So I went to the Price is Right to win money to fund the book.
Yeah.
But when you're 18 and you have a sailboat,
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah, really challenges
there was
your passion.
There was a second. I wasn't like seriously considering keeping it, but there was a second I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm 18. This could be really good. So, and what I ended up doing was, so I found a boat dealer. So the way the Price is Right does these things is they don't have a sailboat in their office. They call a boat dealer. They pay the boat dealer to give you the sailboat.
And is it like delivered?
So yeah, so I get, contacted, the month after I'm on the show by this boat dealer saying, hey, we have your boat. The Price is Right just paid for. Like, when do you want it delivered?
Yeah.
I was like, look, you're a boat dealer. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, so you sell boats? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, keep the boat on your property.
Yeah.
Let me come check it out. And, maybe we can make a deal that you just keep the boat and I'll throw you a little money and you just cut me a check.
Yeah.
Because I needed cash. I didn't need a boat.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So the funniest thing, though, is, I'm 18 and I'm still trying to, like, I had my first kiss that year. I was very late in development. So I actually, this is very embarrassing if I did, but I actually took some lady friends freshman year of college to my boat. But when we would go there, it was like in Marina Del Rey.
Yeah.
They're like, it's not in the water.
Yeah.
I'm like,
who cares?
I was like,
I have a boat.
It's a boat.
Yeah.
I didn't say it was in the water.
That's so good. That's
so I
18
had like a
and
little,
good.
I had a little adventure on the boat, but like I ended up, I sold it back to the boat dealer and I got, I think like $17,000 in cash, which when you're a broke college student is $1 million.
That's so much money.
And my only expenses were, buying economy plane tickets to travel around to get these interviews. So it actually lasted me a really long time.
So can you give me this? Can you give me like your mentality when like, so you obviously you win Price is Right. You're probably on like cloud 9.
Yeah.
You have this dream of gathering all this information. Now you have $17,000. Like, is it like you're sitting in your dorm and you're like, okay, now I need the master plan? Or like, how did that, you know what I'm saying? Like, how did that look from actually carrying out this wild first part of the story to then putting it into action?
So the next step was like, all right, I have this dream to go on this quest to learn from the world's most successful people. But now that I finally had the means to do it, it's like, all right, well, who am I going to interview?
Yeah.
I obviously knew I wanted Bill Gates, but who else would be on that list? So one night I called my best friends up, the boys I grew up with, my brothers. And I was like, guys, come over. We need to brainstorm. So they all come over and I asked them, if we can make our dream university, who would be our professors? And that made it super easy. Bill Gates would teach business. Lady Gaga would teach music. Steve Wozniak would teach computer science. Maya Angelou poetry. Jane Goodall science. Quincy Jones production. Spielberg film. Larry King broadcasting. Before we knew, we had this really incredible list.
Yeah.
And I wrote all those names onto a note card, and that sort of became the treasure map for this book.
Okay.
And this journey the past 7 years.
So now you have a treasure map. You have 17 grand.
Yeah. And
what's step one?
Well, it's so funny because the next day after I came up with this list with my friends, it was summer vacation after freshman year of college. It was like the second or third day of summer vacation. I remember feeling so good, just so amped because I was thinking, I have the money.
Yeah.
I have the treasure map, So I go to I created this little, my mom had a little storage closet attached to her office where she kept like filing boxes. And I like moved out all the filing boxes and put in a desk and I made it like my little office. But it was pretty much like a storage closet. So I go to the storage closet office and I sit behind my desk, open my computer. This is like the first day that I'm like, full time working on the book.
Yeah.
And I'm 18, and this like cold feeling like pulses through my body. And my only thought is, now what? Because I was realizing for the first time that as much as I hated like checking boxes growing up,
Yeah.
they made things a lot easier.
Yeah. At least you know what boxes to check.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
this was the first time in my life I never had a teacher telling me what to do, a boss telling me when to show up. This was the first time I had actually been on my own.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, after doing all these interviews, I've realized that that moment is so critical to anyone who's setting out to start something new.
Yep.
Where you finally have the courage to take the leap.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you're on the other side, you're all alone. Not only with no resources, but even more scary, with no plan on what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is that really when it comes to pursuing a dream,
Mm-hmm.
the most important moment isn't, and the hardest part isn't actually achieving it.
Mm-hmm.
It's stepping through this moment of uncertainty.
Yep.
And what I've learned is, while life is a lot easier when you have a boss or a teacher telling you what to do,
Mm-hmm.
no one ever achieves a dream from the comfort of certainty.
Mm-hmm. Is that the difference maker, do you think? If I forced you, I know there's a million variables, but
Yeah.
if I forced you to take it down to kind of one thing or one personality trait that differentiates
Oh, wow.
the make or break thing. And a lot of people ask me all the time, are entrepreneurs born or made? I don't really like that question because I feel like a lot of times, my personal opinion is, I feel like a lot of times it's a way for entrepreneurs to try to sound cool and separate themselves from everyone else and say, oh, well, they're definitely born. You can't make us, right? So my question is that the thing that differentiates the stars from the rest and the entrepreneurs from the employees and the this from the that, do you think?
So this is what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, it's sort of this overarching lesson that I've learned from all the interviews.
Yep.
And, when I started this journey, I wasn't looking for this one secret to success. All those TED Talks, it's like the one key. And I started to roll my eyes, know?
Yep.
But what ended up happening is about like 5 years into the journey of doing all these interviews, I realized that although, Bill Gates and Maya Angelou couldn't be more different.
Yep.
At the core, every single person I talk to lives the exact same way.
Yep.
And they have the same mindset when it comes to life, businesses, or success.
Mm-hmm.
And the analogy that came to me is that, because I was 21, the analogy was, it's sort of like a nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
There's always 3 ways in.
Mm-hmm.
There's the first door, the main entrance, where the line curves around the block,
Mm-hmm.
where 99% of people wait in line hoping to get in.
Yeah, that line's rough.
Right?
Yep.
And you just hope the bouncer lets you in.
Ugh.
And then there's the second door, the VIP entrance, where the billionaires and celebrities go through.
Nice. Sign me up.
Yeah, everyone wants to be there,
Sure,
right?
give me the wristband.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And school has this way of making you feel like those are the only 2 ways in. You either wait your turn or you're born into it.
Yeah.
But what I've learned, and what you know very well, is that there's always the third door.
Uh-huh.
And it's the entrance where you have to jump out of line, run down the alley, bang on the door 100 times, crack open the window, go through the kitchen. There's always a way in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if that's how Gates sold his first piece of software or how Lady Gaga got her first record deal. They all took that third door.
Yeah.
And the biggest, personality trait or whatever you want to call it that differentiates all the people who've achieved their dreams
Mm-hmm.
and the people who, sort of have regrets in their life. What I've learned
Mm-hmm.
and what surprised me the most, it wasn't the act of achieving the dream that was the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
You've built businesses, you've done a lot of stuff. It's hard. But the hardest part that differentiates people is the process of leaving the line for the first door.
Yeah.
Because not only is that the safe place and the comfortable place, that's where all your friends are.
Yeah.
That's where your parents expect you to be. And that's what you've known your whole life.
Yeah.
It's well lit. There's street lamps.
You know what else I think is? I think that people love to say, I did what I was supposed to and life wasn't fair. Like that's so
Bingo.
comforting.
Yeah.
Even though it's a miserable feeling,
Yeah.
it's comforting to be able to blame life or blame circumstances or blame whatever and say, I was in the line. I had a nice button up on. I even wore dress shoes.
Yeah.
And that asshole held me back from that. You know what I'm saying? It's interesting. And so that's kind of, so what happened was.
Do you know who never says that though?
Who?
Fucking immigrants.
Yeah.
If you see an immigrant, like they are
I love
working until, 3 a.m. because they know that they're not, guaranteed anything.
Yeah. There's so much to learn from that mentality.
Because immigrants aren't allowed in the main entrance, so they have to take the third door.
Yeah. Yeah. There's only one. Yeah. There's only one way in.
They only can take the third door, which is why you hear all these crazy immigrant rags to riches stories.
Yep. So what happened? Like you, and we'll kind of go back, but I mean, because we're talking about the third door, and that's the title of the book, was it like you pieced together all of these stories and then you found the thing, and the through line, and that's what you named the third door? Like you kind of saw this repeating pattern of like, oh, these people do it their own way.
It was late into the game though. It was almost like if you're a big music fan, if you start listening to an album enough, you start noticing this like common melody in every song that's not obvious.
Yep.
Only until like the 100th listen.
Yep.
It took me like my 100th listen to be like, wait a minute, Steve Wozniak and Jessica Alba are more similar than I thought.
Yeah.
It took years
Yeah.
because on the surface they are complete opposites.
Yep. Okay, let me ask you this. Where would you, so if that's a sort of a skill set or a wiring or a whatever that most successful people share, where do you see that trait coming from the most? Is it from parenting? Is it from waking up and recognizing one day that the third door exists? Like where does it come from? Do you know? Or is it a combination of a lot of things?
I think it's a combination. One of the people I interviewed who's mind-blowingly smart is this guy named Dean Kamen. And he invented, he's one of the greatest inventors alive on earth. He created the Segway, the iBot electric wheelchair, the bionic arm, the drug infusion pump, the insulin infusion pump, the slingshot water purifier. He's in the National Inventors Hall of Fame, has 400 patents. Like the guy is like Bill Gates turns to him for advice. And I'm sitting with Dean Kamen for an interview, and I'm looking at him, and he sort of tells me his theory of how this comes to be. And his theory is this thing called the internal bias, where when you're young, and if you actually read biographies of very successful people, there's a lot of, good, support to Dean Kamen's theory, where when someone's young, they, through circumstances that they weren't even aware of, create this internal bias of possibility. Where, all right, let's say, for example, you grew up in a city where no one's really good at basketball because everyone's like short and not athletic. So you try for the basketball team. And because of these circumstances, you get on the team and you think, oh, wow, if I try out for something, I'll get it. It's not true, but you create this like delusional story in your head as a kid that if you try for something, you get it. And there's this book called Mindset that talks about this, but you sort of create this mindset of possibility. And the third door at the end of the day is really a mindset of, if I go for it and I run down the alley and I bang on the door 100 times, I'll find a way. There's always a way. So you either, with a lot of the people who took the third door very young, Spielberg, Gates, Gaga, they all had these, early experiences as kids where they where their life and their eyes were blown wide open. But what I've learned is that there is a practical way that you can, if you want, train your brain to start thinking in those terms.
How do you do that?
So I learned it from this book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And if you read like the back of the 4 Hour Work Week, Tim Ferriss credits it as one of his favorite books. Like it's legendary. My copy is underlined hundreds and hundreds of times. And in The Magic of Thinking Big, the author talks about a thing called a memory bank. And it's a way to rewire your subconscious. So what you do is you open your journal, and let's say you want to train your mind to see life through the lens of the third door more. This is what you do. It's actually very straightforward, and it works. Like it almost sounds too good to be true, but it works. I've done it on many topics. So you create a thing, on the top of the page, you write third door memory bank. And what you do is every night, and you can make it a 30-day challenge. Every night for the next 30 nights, spend 10 minutes writing a new story from your life where you had a third door moment and it worked.
Yep.
And what happens is like, you know, by night 5, you start getting into a groove of it. By night 15, it starts feeling good. By like the 25th story, you start walking around being like, oh, I've lived my whole life this way.
Yeah.
And you essentially convince your brain to thinking that you are natural at taking the third door.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Gates and Spielberg, it happened to them like naturally in their upbringing.
Yep.
You can rewire your brain to start thinking that way.
Yep.
Literally in a 30-day challenge, you can change the entire way you view your life.
Yep.
And what I've learned is that when you change what you believe is possible, you change what becomes possible.
Yep.
And that's the most powerful thing.
That's it. Okay, I can see a problem even with myself. If I went to do this, a problem is I'm naturally going to think of too big of stories, right? And I'm going to run out of stories on the second day. Can you give me an example of like a small event or story that you've used so that I can use it as reference? Meaning like, oh, that time when I ordered pizza and blah, blah. You know, is that what you're doing? Or?
That's exactly it. It could be the smallest things of like, it could be even like trivial things. Like, you know, I lost my phone on the streets and, you know, didn't have a find a way home. So I like tracked down this guy, asked him to borrow his, called it could literally be the smallest things of you doing whatever it took to find a way to make it happen.
Like the other day, last week on Friday, I left my phone in the office and everyone left, and I don't keep a key on me, which is ridiculous, but I don't keep a key to the office on me. So we set the alarm, we left, I went down, got in my car, realized that I didn't have a key. And the first door would have been to call one of the employees, the office manager, the whatever, have them bring me a key, wait around for half an hour, get back in the building. Instead, I went and found the cleaning lady because I knew she obviously cleans the place, had her come in, let me in, grab the phone. Does that count?
Yeah, but this is the thing. If you start doing in isolation, that story is like, oh, a good story.
Yeah.
30 of them back to back.
Yes.
And this is the thing, too, that I've learned.
That's all I wanted to check.
Yeah.
Because I know that what happens with myself, and I think that I'm speaking for a lot of the listeners, is we hear this exercise and it's like,
it doesn't sound like that big of a deal.
Shit, I don't know. I can't think of, but like, I see what you're saying. If you piece together a bunch of those little moments where you just kind of stepped out of the normal way of thinking to get something done, right?
Exactly. And you can even, you know, if someone's young listening to this, even in school, man, you know, your teacher, you know, gave you a B minus and you want her to round it up to a B, and then you stayed after school and you begged and she did it. You know, even these little things where what you'll notice is, again, and one of the biggest things to this exercise where I've shared this with a bunch of people, the ones where it worked is when they actually stick to 30 days in a row. If you're doing it 30 times and you spread it out over the course of a few months, it's the repetition that starts doing it. And it really starts kicking in by day like 25, 26, 27, 28, 29.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating, these tools, because I believe in it heavily, and I didn't probably a couple years ago, but the tools and the exercises you can do to train your brain, right?
It's like crazy.
I'm fascinated by how much we believe in training our physical bodies, or, you know what I'm saying, but we don't think about mental. And you think that like you can change organs. You know, if you have bad kidneys, you can eat differently, you can do things differently. You don't think about your brain and how you can sort of.
And what's the one thing in your body that determines
your whole
the
life?
happiness of your life and the success of your life?
That good old brain.
Right? But we go to the gym and we're like, oh, our biceps are looking ripped. We put so much time into our biceps, but how much time are we spending every day training our brain?
Yep. That's mind blowing. Okay, so obviously I got to go back to this part. How in the hell, you have the money, you have the list, who's the first person, and how the hell did you get from college guy who thinks that a hot tub is $600 to sitting down with Bill Gates and Lady Gaga and all these people?
So every single interview came in a different way. You know, for Bill Gates, it took 2 years. For Lady Gaga, it took 3 years. Like Larry King. Larry King is probably one of the crazier stories where that happened about a couple years into the journey where I was just getting beat up over and over. Pretty much the journey of writing this book is one long string of me just getting this shit beat out of me. You know, with
just
rejection.
deny.
Yeah, and like, you know, as an entrepreneur, like what looks like a win is really when you're getting 1 out of 100.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you got the one. And you're like, yeah, but I got beat up 99 times,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So true.
So with Larry King, I had just spent 8 months writing letters to Warren Buffett and him just emotionally beating the shit out of me. And
Like just saying like, no, fuck off, or like what?
look, and he was very kind, but you have to understand, if you're spending, this wasn't a part-time thing for me.
Yeah.
I was waking up at 6 a.m. for 8 months straight with my only life objective, trying to interview Warren Buffett. So I'm writing letter after letter after letter after letter. And he would actually handwrite responses back to me every now and then. But I'd write 2 pages saying, would you do an interview? And he would write 2 sentences saying no.
Yeah.
But
And would you write, like, sorry, just because I think this is also fascinating, because we live in the time where everyone is more and more, like, bigger and bigger on this, like, find a mentor thing, right? Did you just find the address to Berkshire Hathaway or something, and you just wrote letters and said, attention, Warren Buffett?
yeah,
And then in it, would you write, my name's Alex, this is what I'm trying to do, I'm really hoping to write this book, blah, blah, blah. Would you take a moment with me? Like, is that how you went about it?
yeah, exactly.
Got
And my biggest thing that I always did before ever reaching out to someone is I would make sure I knew everything I possibly could about the person.
Got it.
With Buffett, that is a heavy task. There's dozens of books about him. Even one book on Warren Buffett, the main book, the authorized biography, 800 pages.
Yeah, that's insane.
And I read every single word of that.
Yeah.
Like, took notes on every single page.
Yep.
Um,
So what happens? How do you land that finally after all that time?
Well, so the Buffett and Larry King thing are very tied together.
Yeah.
If we want to focus on the Buffett stuff is crazy.
Either one, whichever one's, or both, whichever.
They're both crazy.
Yep.
So pretty much what happens is I spent 8 months, writing these letters to Buffett
Mm-hmm.
every week, calling his assistant week after week after week, and it's like, boom in the gut. I'm emotionally bending over, coughing up blood by month 6. By month 6 of rejection, until finally, at the end, Buffett's assistant feels bad for me, and she's like, "Look, Alex, I know Warren. I know he's not going to say yes. So how about, as my guest, you come to the shareholders meeting?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And she's like, "Yeah, you can bring friends." And I was like, "That's amazing." She sent me 6 tickets. And when I'm on the phone with her name is Debbie. I'm like, "Hey, Debbie, isn't it true that people at the shareholders meeting can ask Mr. Buffett questions during the Q&A portion?" She's like, Alex. I know what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
There's 30,000 people there and only 30 get asked questions. So it's a complete lottery. So it's 1 in 1,000 odds.
You're like, well, let me tell you something about about this setup.
Right, exactly.
I'm getting my yellow hoodie out.
Right, exactly.
yeah.
So pretty much exactly. Me and my 5 childhood best friends, we all fly to Omaha.
Yeah.
And, we're all staying in the 1 bedroom in the Motel 6 guys, 1 bed. And we end up going to Buffett shareholders meeting at 4:00 in the morning. So we're like right there in the beginning.
Yeah.
We go inside as soon as the doors open, and we find out there's a loophole to Buffett's lottery system.
Of course.
After this, you're like, of course.
Yep, of course there is.
And what we found out is that, so there's a loophole, and out of the 6 of us, although the odds were 1 in 1,000, 4 got winning lottery tickets.
Jesus Christ.
But what ended up happening is not only did we ask my interview questions to Buffett in front of 30,000 people, it ended as this like whole disaster because we think Buffett finally caught on to what was happening. And he actually ended the meeting as my 4th friend walked up to the spotlight, went to the microphone, and Buffett, because by the way, everyone there is in like suit and tie, and me and my friends are like in jeans and hoodies.
Yeah.
So like it was very noticeable what was happening.
Yeah.
By the time my 4th friend went up to the microphone, the spotlight shot on, and Buffett goes, "You know what? This is a perfect time to end the shareholders meeting. Thank you everyone for coming," and just cuts the mic. So I pretty much get spit out. I go back to LA and I'm just feeling like shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting on the sidewalk, and my best friend Corwin knows I need to cheer up a little. So he's like, "Dude, why don't we go to lunch and grab a sandwich?" So we go to a grocery store and we're getting sandwiches, and we're sitting on the sidewalk eating our sandwiches. And I'm just venting, the way you do only to your best friend.
Yep.
I'm just like, "Dude, this fucking sucks." Like, I spent 8 months on Buffett, and the shareholders meeting ended in a disaster. What am I going to do? And he's like, dude, just focus on other interviews. Don't you have anyone else lined up? I'm like, not at all. And he's like, come on, man. And I'm like, dude, even if I did have interviews lined up, I would probably fuck that up too. Like, look at what happened with the shareholders meeting. And he's like, dude, like, you got to be kinder to yourself, man. Interviewing, it's not a science, it's an art.
Yeah.
And as we start talking about that, one of the most miraculous moments of my entire life happens.
Mm-hmm.
A car pulls up, parks right in front of us in the loading zone.
Mm-hmm.
The door swings open, and out walks Larry King. And it was such an unbelievable moment that I froze. And I don't know if you've ever, been in such a surreal place where you get paralyzed.
Yeah, absolutely.
My feet turn to stone, my throat clenches, and Larry King just walks right past us, right through the store, sliding glass windows, and I don't say a word. And my friend Corwin is like hitting me with his elbow. He's like, dude, come on, say something. And this is the thing about, like, I call this feeling the flinch, that paralyzed feeling. The thing about the flinch is that it like disguises itself as logic. So I'm telling my friend, I'm like, dude, like, he doesn't want to be bothered. My friend Corwin's like, dude, just say hi. And then I come up with other reasons, like, he's already inside the grocery store. How am I going to find him? He's like, Corwin's like, dude, he's 80 years old. How far could he have gone?
He's not going fast.
So just so I like don't feel embarrassed, I like very reluctantly stand up. I go into the grocery store. I look around the bakery section, no Larry. So I jog over to the produce section, fruits, vegetables, no Larry. And that's when I remember he parked in the loading zone. So he must be leaving any minute now. So this like boost of adrenaline kicks in, and I start sprinting through the grocery store, looking down every aisle. No Larry, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry. I'm cutting down the frozen food section, like dodging this towering can of tuna fish. No Larry. He has to be at the checkout counter. So I run to the checkout. No Larry, no Larry, no Larry, no Larry. And at that point, I just want to kick myself because he had been right in front of me and I didn't say a thing. And, I walk out of the grocery store. I'm in the parking lot and staring down at my feet. And I finally look up, and right there, 20 feet ahead, is Larry King, suspenders and all. The
whole thing.
And again, sort of like this Price is Right moment, I just uncontrollably, I think what happened was all this like anger and embarrassment and humiliation from the Warren Buffett situation just combusted within me. And out of my mouth, an eruption happened, and I'm just like, Mr. King! And literally the echo in the parking lot multiplied it by 10. So it was very loud. And the poor guy, Larry King, I'll never forget. Dude, he's had quadruple bypass surgery.
And you're sneaking up on him. Mr. King!
Literally, I'll never forget. He like jumps, like his shoulders go up, and he like turns his head around like this. Like literally, like as if like the Grim Reaper is right behind him. So he starts like going double time towards his car, and I'm like, fuck, like I already made it this far. I gotta keep. So I like run over to him. I'm like, hey, Mr. King, my name's Alex. I'm 18. I think at that point I was like 19. I'm like, Mr. King, I'm Alex. I'm 19 years old. I've always wanted to say hi. And he goes, okay, hi, and he just goes on.
And that was it.
No, man, I'm just gonna I keep following him. I'm trying to think of what to say, but he's like trying to avoid eye contact. He's like gunning into his car. He gets to his car. He puts the groceries. I actually even remember this like this weird detail. He had like pirate's booty in his groceries.
Favorite snack.
Go figure. So he puts the groceries in the trunk of his car. He opens the driver's side door, and I just go to him and I'm like, wait, Mr. King, can I go to breakfast with you? And he looks at me like I'm this lunatic. And before he can answer, he looks around and sees on the sidewalk about 10 people are watching this go down. So I think just out of like embarrassment, he's just like, okay. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, great. I'll see you tomorrow. And he's like, okay. And he like gets into his car. And right before he closes the door, I go, wait, Mr. King, what time? And he looks at me and slams the door shut. And I'm like, okay, maybe he didn't hear me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I yell like through the windshield, Mr. King, what time? And he looks at me and just turns on the engine. Mr. King, what time? He like puts it in drive. I'm now standing in front of his car, waving my hands in front of the windshield. Mr. King, what time? And he just looks at me and he's like, 9 o'clock. He just speeds off. And sure enough, the next morning, I show up at 9 o'clock. I knew he had like this bagel shop that he owns in LA.
Yeah.
So I show up at 9 o'clock and there he is sitting in the first booth. And he's sitting with his best friends. And there's a seat open at the booth. But I had some time to reflect on my prior actions from the day before. So I was a bit embarrassed. So I was trying to be a bit more gentle. So I walk up to the table and I'm like, hey, good morning, Mr. King. And he looks up and he's like, and, I'm like, okay, maybe he wants some time with his friend. So I just sit at the table next to him waiting for him to call me over.
Yeah.
10 minutes pass. 30 minutes pass. An hour passes. And finally, he stands up. And he starts walking towards me. And then walks right past me and heads for the exit. And I'm like, all right, maybe he missed me. So I'm like, Mr. King? And he goes, what is it, kid? What do you want? And at that point, I just felt that, that familiar pain in my chest. And I was like, I just looked at him and I was like, honestly, I just wanted some advice on how to interview people.
Yeah.
And the smile spreads across his face, almost as if he was saying, why didn't you say so?
Yeah.
And he stops and puts a hand on my shoulder and gives me, one of the best monologues of interview advice. And at the end of his monologue, he checks his watch and looks up at the ceiling, almost as if he's debating something in his mind.
Yeah.
And then he lowers his eyes and locks them onto mine and goes, all right, kid, tomorrow, 8:45, see you here. And I'm like, okay, great. And I show up the next morning at 8:45. He waves me over to his table and he's like, oh, why are you trying to interview people? And I tell him about the book and he goes, all right, I'm in. And not only does he do an interview for the book, over the past 5 years, I've been to breakfast with him over 50 times.
Oh, man. How amazing.
He changed my life in more ways than one.
And you think the main thing he connected with was just your passion for this and really wanting something because I know a lot of people might come across celebrities or rich people or people who are successful or whatever, and what I think is so important is at least having something. You have to have something of why you really, not just I just wanted to meet you and get a selfie for my Instagram, right? Do you think that that's what he connected with and why he gave you so much time, because he could see that this is something you were truly passionate about?
I think in hindsight, whether it's Larry King or what eventually led to Bill Gates saying yes, is that there would always be this moment of tension where the person really wants to get a restraining order from me, where at some point they would ask me what's the point of this? And I would just look at them and tell them the truth, which is I just have this belief that if all these people come together, not for press, not to promote anything, but really just to share their best wisdom with the next generation, young people can do so much more.
Yeah.
And that's when they're like, all right, we're in, And my theory in hindsight is that every single one of these people remembers what it was like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's this quote that I heard once that changed everything for me. It said, the one thing every, famous musician, best-selling author, billionaire CEO, the one thing they all have in common is that they all started when they were none of those things. And that's really the essence of this book.
And that's where you get them. You know what I mean?
I think they all
Remember.
have, yeah.
Remember what it's like, pass it on. And they're like,
Exactly.
all right, sure. But I just think there must be something too about like just the way you just own it. Like you just are it and you authentically want that information for a good cause. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And they're just like, man, they can't avoid. It's pretty incredible. I will say this, like, how do you overcome the rejection and the fear of rejection? And you know what I mean? 'Cause that's even hard. I always tell people, like, look, if you want to start a brand, if you want to do that stuff, you have to be prepared to get rejected a million times and hopefully get one yes. But like, it's rough. It's still rough for me this day. How did you like armor yourself against that? Or you just took the beating?
Dude, not only did I didn't want to take the beating,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think there are two things, and we can sort of dissect them both.
Yep.
The rejection and the fear are
Yes.
it's two different beasts.
Meaning the rejection and the fear of the rejection? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or the fear of just the uncertainty, the rejection, all that comes with it.
Yep.
It's two different beasts that guard the entrance to your dream.
Yep.
And the first one really is the fear, because even before you get rejected, the fear of the rejection comes beforehand.
Yep.
And what I've learned is that one of the biggest misconceptions of the world's most successful people is that they're fearless. You know, people see Elon Musk and they're like, yeah, but I'm not Elon. I'm not fearless like him.
Yep.
What I've learned is that actually it doesn't matter if it's Zuckerberg, Gates, they all were extremely scared in the beginning.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Yeah.
And while they were all fearless, it's not about being, well, none of them were fearless, right? Fearlessness is jumping off of the cliff
Yeah.
and, just not thinking about the consequences.
Yeah.
That's fearlessness.
Yeah.
Courage, on the other hand, is acknowledging your fears, analyzing the consequences, and deciding you still care so much that you're going to take one thoughtful step forward anyway. So while the goal should never be fearlessness, courage is the single most important thing when it comes to achieving a dream, because fear is a natural part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
It does not matter. Dude, even if you're Bill Gates, you're still dealing with fear. It's the natural part of the human experience.
Yep.
So being fearless means to ignore your reality, which is being an idiot. But courage is acknowledging the reality, studying the consequences, trying to plan, to pad your fall, but still taking one thoughtful step forward anyway. Now with the rejections, though, there's nothing you can do to pad that shit.
Get drunk. You know what I mean? What do? You just go home and like, shit, that one hurt.
Well, the hardest thing is that, and I read this once, the author of The Alchemist wrote this, where, if you're in school and you don't really care that much, but you're trying and you get an F on a test, it hurts, but you might not be crying.
Yeah, because I don't think you care. It doesn't define you really, right? Like it's not defining your dreams.
Exactly. When you leave everything behind and you go all in on a dream, and when you fail there, when you get rejected there, it's personal, man. And although everyone says it's not personal, it's fucking personal.
Yeah.
It hurts.
So what do you do on that? Just wait out the pain?
So I've learned two things from my own experience. Let's talk about the Buffett 8 months of rejection. There were points where I was, literally on the floor, cradling in the fetal position, crying with a cockroach walking in front of my face. Like it got that bad. And at the end of the day, what I've realized is that when you are out of resources, out of intros you can ask for people, out of ideas, when literally you've just been beaten and you have nothing left, the only thing that you have to keep you alive is that original belief that started the mission. And it might not sound like much, but if you remember the movie Castaway, all he had was that fucking volleyball Wilson, And really, that's what kept him alive.
Yeah.
Having this thing that you can hold on to just keep your spirit from completely washing away.
Yeah.
And to me, it was this belief that I might be completely rejected now, but it's all going to be worth it. And holding on to that is the most important thing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the second thing that I've learned, I think is the most underrated thing. Because, you hear all these people talk about, never stop grinding, never take breaks, like no sleep. Dude, fuck that. Take a nap,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that. Not only am I a big fan of just naps, but I'm a big fan of of the I hate the work thing. You know what I mean? I know, of course it takes hard work. We all know that. That's guaranteed. But the quality of life and therefore the quality of work you put out is such a more intricate, detailed part of the game and the message and the education than just work harder,
100%.
Yeah.
And sometimes the thing you need the most to keep your dream going is to fucking take a day off.
Yeah.
Eat some ice cream, go for a walk, kick it with your friends to remind yourself why you're even doing this in the first place.
Yeah. It's so true. Let me ask you this. What is the moment, you're Wilson, is that moment book release day? What's the moment for you?
It's funny because I've been actually thinking about that a lot recently.
Yeah.
It's crazy to be working on something for 7 years that's finally coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I've been surprised by what moments have felt the best.
Mm-hmm.
It might sound cheesy, but to me it was actually surprising because, look, I can admit I think everyone has ego, and I definitely have some too.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like these moments of doing something on CNBC would be
Yep.
This is the fucking coolest.
Yep.
And it is cool, don't get me wrong, but none of that has even come close to, I think the most fulfilling part of the past month has been my younger cousin, who, I love him and we're close, but we're not we don't really talk about this kind of stuff. He read one of these early copies of the book, and he sent me a text at 2:00 in the morning. And he's a freshman in college. And he goes, I screenshotted this and put in the favorites of my phone. He wrote, "Hey man, you're not the only Banayan who was on his bed staring up at the ceiling."
Yeah.
And he wrote this long text, and I started crying.
Yeah.
Because, don't get me wrong, I love the book and I love all of that. It's fun.
Yeah.
But the whole reason I started was because I was going through this crisis, and I truly believe that going on this journey and getting this wisdom from all these people will help other people going through this crisis themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels really, really good to get messages from strangers that it's helped them.
Mm-hmm.
But for my younger cousin,
yeah, that's huge.
He's like my blood. He's 75% we're the same DNA.
Yeah.
I remember I was sitting on the edge of my bed when I read the text message and I started crying.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows that. And that to me is the fucking coolest thing, that this journey already changed my life. The fact that it changed the life of someone who I love.
Yep.
Yeah. Nothing comes close to that.
Let me ask you this. So did the journey of trying to help other people fill that emptiness, fill the emptiness for you? Do you now feel complete?
Dude, I love this. This is like a cross between the best therapy session and getting drunk with a friend at a bar.
Yeah.
It's the perfect.
Yeah. That's what I go for.
This is the perfect combination.
There it is.
It's so when I started the book, it wasn't I was going through the what I want to do with my life crisis, and it wasn't the answer to the crisis was not be an author.
Yeah.
And I still don't actually think it is.
That's why I wonder.
It's still my goal never was to be an author, and it's never been, and it still isn't my end all.
Mm-hmm.
What happened though, as I worked on this, is that I would share, as I would do these interviews, I would share the stories. I do speaking a bunch, and I would share the third door analogy, and I would see people's eyes light up.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see the impact not only the stories of how the book came together, but the
Mhm.
stories of Gates or the stories of Buffett or Spielberg, how it changes people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is that you can give people, and this was probably one of the biggest realizations I've had the past few years
Mm-hmm.
as I've come to the end of this journey writing the book. You can give people the best tools and knowledge in the world, and their life can still feel stuck.
Mm-hmm.
But if you change what someone believes is possible,
Mm-hmm.
they'll never be the same. And that really, I've realized, is the soul of this book.
Mm-hmm.
And the book chose that soul.
Mhm.
I didn't choose. I know it sounds weird.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
author
yeah.
of the book, but the book has its own. It's like a child. It has its own personality.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
And what I've learned is that that's really like my personal mission now,
Yep.
which is changing what people believe is possible.
Yep.
Dude, there's this great story that I
So
read.
good. Yeah.
There's this great story, and I can't even remember where I heard it, but like it was during my research of writing the book.
Uh-huh.
I read the story of a teacher for Teach for America,
Mm-hmm.
and she's, I think, teaching at a school in Baltimore in this really rough neighborhood. She's teaching elementary school, just tough neighborhood, tough school. And one day she just was like, these kids need some inspiration. So she's like, all right, today what we're going to do is I'm going to pass out sheets of paper and crayons, and you're all going to color and draw a picture of your biggest dream.
Uh-huh.
And, all the kids start, drawing pictures, except for this one boy sitting in the back of the class, doesn't touch a crayon. Blank face. And the teacher's a bit concerned, but she lets him be. And about halfway through, his eyes light up and he starts coloring.
Uh-huh.
And the kids turn in the pictures. And as she's going through them, at the end of class, she notices the little boy drew a pizza delivery man.
Uh-huh.
A pizza delivery man. And now she is really concerned. So she calls the mother of that child that night and explains what happened. And the mother wasn't surprised at all.
Mm-hmm.
She said the only man in his life who wasn't on drugs or in jail is his uncle who delivers pizza.
Mm-hmm.
And what that story taught me is that young people will always reach for the highest branch they think is possible.
Yep.
It's our job to illuminate those branches.
Yeah.
And what I love about this podcast, what I love about the book is that really we're on a mission to illuminate more branches.
Yeah, you're right. I'm a branch illuminator.
But dude, you really are,
Yeah.
You bring on people
Yeah.
who have done really remarkable things, who have defied what even they believed is possible.
Yeah.
And you share those stories.
It's funny because it's actually very similar. Like, because obviously, when I started this podcast, I really dug deep for I need to start creating content. Was the first thing. Okay, great. Well, I need to create some content that's in line with who I actually am and what I actually want to build upon. Because I obviously was a part of a lot of content being MTV for 9 years, but it wasn't in line with who I am, so I can't scale that, right? So I started thinking about really digging deep on what my goal was and my mission, who I was, and it was really that I'm not some crazy clothing designer. I'm not an athlete. I'm not whatever. I'm a kid from Akron, Ohio, who with no college education that moved to LA and made kind of the entrepreneurial dream come true, right? And then I thought of, well, the reason why I did that, or what allowed me to do that, was I took a big leap by moving here and was scared to death and all that stuff. But by being here and by listening and paying attention, I met so many people that were doing things way beyond what I ever thought was possible. And they were relatable, and they became my friends and my cousin and all these different things. And by just listening and learning, it allowed me to see that I could do that too. And that was literally when I moved here, my one and only dream, life mission, dream come true was to work at a skate shop and live in a studio apartment in the Valley. That was it. That was peak Christopher
That was
Paff
before
life.
you knew what was possible.
Yep. Then I moved here, made friends, saw what was possible, and was like, holy shit. So the mission for the podcast is, how do I give other people that same experience, right? How do I sit down with all these different people, bring them down to earth, and let you connect and just see where it's just all normal people, right? Everyone's going for it. Everyone's scared. Everyone's this, everyone's that. But hopefully by listening to it, you connect with even one, and say, well, shit, I can go do my thing because I learned from Alex or from whatever, right? But very similar, very cool. Like that's why I really connect with it after hearing it. You know what I mean? Really fucking cool. Let me ask you this: of all your things, of all these rejections, I'm sure you have a lot of them. What's your single most favorite failure?
Ooh. Oh, if you asked me this like a few years ago, I would start crying. It's taken like a lot of therapy to talk about this comfortably.
Yeah.
Oh, this one. Oh my God. This is one because I couldn't forgive myself for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up so with Buffett, you heard the whole story with the shareholders meeting. It ended in a fiasco. What happened after is that I finally ended up getting the interview with Bill Gates.
Uh-huh.
And it went so well with Bill Gates that Bill Gates' office was like, look, we'll help you however we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very nice,
Yeah.
So, Bill Gates is best friends with Warren Buffett. I was like, hey, I would still love to do a sit-down interview with Warren Buffett.
Yep.
Do you think you can help arrange that? And they're like, yeah, of course. So Gates' office reaches out to Buffett's office. And I'll never know exactly what happened. But essentially my guess is they said, Buffett's office was like, we know all about Alex, and it's not happening. And I got a note from Gates' office saying, please do not ever contact Buffett's office again. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, man, what a
Which,
heartbreaker.
It was shocking to me because at that point, it wasn't even a rejection anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd gotten myself blacklisted.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me like a truck, this realization that every business book talks about persistence being the key to success.
Mm-hmm.
But none of them talk about the dangers of over persistence. That you can knock on the same door 1,000 times and the door isn't going to come crashing down.
Mm-hmm.
The police are just going to show up. Right? And especially when you're just starting out, you're so prone to make that mistake. And I made that mistake with Buffett.
Yep.
And there's a huge difference, again, between knocking on a door 1,000 times and knocking on a door 5 times. Okay, it didn't work. Let me try the window. Okay, that didn't work. Let me try the kitchen. Okay, that didn't work. Let me make friends with the bouncer.
Yep.
Being creative, you know?
Yep.
And what I learned with this Warren Buffett situation is I had dug myself into such a deep hole that even Bill Gates couldn't pull me out.
Yeah.
And when that happens, you really fucking learn your lesson the hard way. It's like
that is good, man. And you know what else I love from that? As like the lesson is like, don't knock 100 times on the front door. Knock 10 on the front, 10 on the back, 10 in the window, 10 on the. You know what I mean? At least be a little creative.
Right.
Damn it, that's good. Okay. My next one is I always ask people. A lot of times I ask people what you would say to a college, especially it's graduation time.
Yeah.
A lot of times I say, what would you say to a kid just walking off stage at college graduation? But because of the route you took and the way your story played out, I want to just change it to high school.
Okay.
So if a kid is walking across, coming up any day now, his high school graduation stage, they call his name, he has his cap and gown, he's so excited. He walks off stage and you're sitting there at the bottom of the stairs and you get just a second with him.
Ooh, just a second?
Yeah, I mean, you get just picture it in the moment, right? He walks down and he says, hello? And you're like, hey, son, I'm Alex. Let me tell you something.
This is very creepy.
Hi, I'm Alex from the third door. Let me tell you something. And you get to just bless him, right? What do you tell that guy?
Ooh, man, if you have just a second. Ooh. All right, I'll tell you in a sentence what I would say, and then I'll give you the reason why I would say it.
Yep.
What I would tell him, and this isn't, I would try to frame it in a poetic way, but essentially what I would say is pay attention to what you're procrastinating on. Because it holds more clues than you know. And I'll tell you why.
Son of a bitch, that's right. I just thought about what I was procrastinating on. And I'm like, damn, I really need to do. Yeah.
Right. Think about when you were in
That's the
high
path.
school or when you were 18 or 19 and you were doing like work on your off time when you weren't doing what you were supposed to do and you were procrastinating. What were you spending your time on?
Say it again. When I was 18 or 19.
When you had things you were supposed to be doing, but you were actually procrastinating in your downtime, in your free time.
Yeah.
What were you spending your time doing when you're procrastinating?
Skateboarding.
And that was your dream.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yep.
You want to know one of the craziest things that I discovered in my research?
You're saying for like a way to find your thing.
I think everyone is
Yeah.
So this is a crazy thing I discovered in my research. The cool thing about spending 7 years studying, the world's most successful people,
Yep.
if you go to my office, there are hundreds and hundreds of books of biographies on all these people.
Yep.
And what happens is when you lay them all out next to each other, you start noticing these very random patterns.
Yep.
One thing that I've noticed it's hilarious to me,
Mm-hmm.
is that Facebook and Microsoft, there's something they have in common that no one's ever talked about.
Mm-hmm.
They were started both at the same time of the year,
Uh-huh.
the week before final exams.
Why is that?
Okay, so most colleges have this thing called reading period, dead week, study week. It's pretty much like the week or two before finals. There's no class, so you can study for finals.
Yep.
That is prime procrastination week.
Right. Yeah.
That's when I went on The Price is Right.
Yeah.
It's like, you give an 18-year-old, 2 weeks of nothing to do on a college campus, they're going to procrastinate. It's the successful ones who study.
Yep.
But Facebook was started during that time. Microsoft was started during that time. And my theory, there's no way to prove it. My theory, though, is that what you procrastinate on shows you more about who you truly are than the work you were assigned to do.
Yep. Yep.
And pay very specific attention to those clues because it might lead you exactly where you need to go.
Golden. Okay, how about this one? You can go back in time in our special short story, A Long Time Machine.
It's like Hot Tub Time Machine.
It's like Hot Tub Time Machine, but in these nice gray chairs. And I try to pick a moment, right? So let's just say around the time of, you sound like you were pretty damn smart pretty early, but like around the time when you're in that PE class shouting out bone names, right?
Phalange, yeah.
Phalange, and you're already set on being a doctor and whatever. And all the other things that were potentially going on in your life, good or bad.
Yeah.
Once again, you could kind of take that moment, you appear. Maybe we already went back in time and that was your nightmare that caused you to run into your mom and dad's room. But you can kind of pop up and say, hey, young Alex, listen to this. And just give yourself something that kind of takes the edge off. Or maybe a lot of the worries that you had that you now think you wasted time on. Or, you know what I'm saying? What would you tell young Alex?
I think it's hard to talk about this because it's, a little, it's weird, but I think of a lot. So when I started working on the book, when I was 18 or 19, there would be nights where it was extreme, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. on a Saturday night, up in the office working. For an 18-year-old or a freshman in college, sophomore, it's a bit extreme. And what I would, in hindsight, I think the reason I was doing that, and it wasn't the whole motivation for the book, of course, but it played a part, was I felt so not enough that I thought that if I crushed it on this, finally people would realize my worth. And as I've gotten older and, gone to therapy and journaled a lot, I've realized that's all internal. That was a story from my childhood of, I grew up with big Persian family with 20 cousins. And, every Tuesday night and every Friday night we would have these big family dinners with 30 people shouting on top of each other. And I was the exact middle cousin.
Yep.
So there was, 10 older cousins, 10 younger cousins. I was right in the middle.
Yeah.
So I was I just felt invisible as a child. And I remember in high school, the worst feelings for me were I hated getting rejected because I'd get rejected a bunch. But even worse than that was when I would feel completely invisible, walking through the hallways and people would look right through me.
Yep.
And, I'm not self-aware of this because I'm a kid. But I think a lot of that pain, I went out, when I was a freshman in college, I went out for fraternities and got rejected by everyone. When I was in high school and I asked girls out on dates, I got laughed at by not laughed at. They weren't cruel, but they were just sort of like,
yeah, yeah,
you're my friend, but I think, we should stay that way. And as a kid, instead of acknowledging it as like, this is normal.
Yeah.
I thought I was the only person on earth who was going through this.
Yep.
And it created this extreme amount of pain of me trying to prove myself as being this like worthy whole person. So if I could go back in time, I would just like whisper like, dude, you're all right, man.
Yeah.
Like, and there's this great line from Maya Angelou where she says, you're a human being. No one can be more human than you. No one can be less.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I could go back in time and, release myself of some of that pressure, I still think the book would turn out wonderful in the way it is. It just would have been a bit more enjoyable.
Yep.
I wouldn't have beaten myself up so much.
Yeah.
Because so much of the pain that came with the rejection wasn't just the rejection. It was what I told myself about the rejection. Yeah. That I got rejected because I'm not good enough, because I'm a piece of shit, because of whatever.
Yeah.
Dude, it's not the truth, man.
Yeah.
Buffett's busy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't know me.
So true.
But I just beat myself up unnecessarily.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the lesson of growing up.
That's good. What do you do? What's next for you, man? Like, you now went on this journey. Yeah. This thing comes out on June 5th. It's been 7 years in the making. Where do you go from here? I mean, obviously now you're doing speaking. You're doing venture capital stuff also?
So VC was a part of the journey. I joined Alsop Louis Partners, a VC in San Francisco when I was 19 because they had heard about the book. And the book was sort of like my in there.
And that's where you got the youngest VC in the world thing? Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so that's not a big like part of your time or anything. Okay, so where do you go from here? More speaking, more just refining the message, more illuminating branches? Like, is that what you're...
Dude, I love how you're coining this. I like it, man, illuminating branches.
Yeah,
it feels good.
So that's it. You're on a mission.
Yeah, because what I've... In my office, like the storage closet office, I still work out of there. Mm-hmm. On my door, there's a big white sheet of paper where I wrote with a marker like, I'm not a marketer, I'm a missionary. Mm-hmm. And it just feels better for me when I'm sharing a message I believe in as opposed to like marketing a product. And to me, the book is an amazing canvas to paint this message of possibility on. But it's exactly that. It's just the first canvas. So whatever it is, whatever kind of media comes next, whether it's a documentary or a film or whatever, sharing the message of possibility. And I'm 25, so I feel so fucking lucky to be on this journey. I feel like it's just getting started.
Yeah, it is. Where do people find you? Books out everywhere?
Books out everywhere, June 5th.
That's so freaking cool.
Dude, it's so fun.
Give me social media, website, any of that stuff people should go
to?
To?
So the book website is thirddoorbook.com. So THIRD, thirddoorbook.com. And social is really easy because all the handles are the same. It's just at Alex Banayan. So AlexBanayan.
Deal.
And if you're hearing this, like, let me know you... Dude, there's so many funny things on this episode.
It's so good. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to let's do a giveaway.
Love it.
Let's give away the book. You have the hard copies now, right?
I have the hard copies.
Let's give away some hard copies. Will you sign them?
I would love to.
Maybe put a little inspirational word of wisdom in there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's give away 10 books. If you guys comment on, I'm guessing, most of my listeners are on iTunes. So go to iTunes or the podcast app, go to the feedback section, write your favorite moment from this podcast. Whatever made you laugh.
I love that.
Maybe the greatest takeaway. You don't have to be too detailed, but the first 10 people, we're going to send autographed books to. And then all you got to do is once you put the thing, put your Instagram or social media handle so that we can DM you, reach out to you. And first 10 people are figuring out how to get through that damn third door.
Dude, I love it. It's launch week, man. 7 years in the making.
It's so big, man.
Feels really good, man.
It's so cool. All these ups and downs, and now it's real. Alex, I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, man.
Absolutely crushed it. You're an incredible storyteller. You have an incredible story to tell, and I appreciate it.
Dude, this was so fun, man.
Thank you. I can't wait to read this freaking thing.
Thank you, bro.
We did it. Thank you, guys. We're out of here. We're going out the third door, the same one we came in.
Oh man, dude, that was amazing, man.
That's so good.
So good.
Thank
You're
you,
so
brother.
good at this. It's so
thank
fun.
you, man. Thank you. Guys, if you like that and you want to see more like it, as well as vlogs, other web series, and all the random stuff that I'm doing here on YouTube, don't forget to click that subscribe button. You won't regret it, I promise.